I think keeping it simple, keeping it focused. I'm a big believer that the main thing is keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
And our focus was that I've run full service restaurants. I've run some fast casual and diners and things like that. But our focus was totally on quality of food, doing it the right way, hospitality, and culture. And when you take those components and add them together, when you're not totally focused on, making a profit and an ROI and the whole bit at the beginning, that was an advantage for us. Although, people that know me, profit is not a dirty word. I'm just going to say that.
Amen.
We love that. So that's what it takes to drive business, and we focus on that. But it's so important to just do things. I'm going to continue to call it the Freddy's way.
Welcome to the How to Buy or Sell a Business Successfully podcast. The concepts discussed in this podcast are for informational purposes only. No attorney-client relationship is intended or formed by this podcast. No legal advice is intended in the substance of this podcast. Feel free to check out our website, www.goforemanlaw.com. Enjoy the show and welcome your hosts, Jake Wayman and Sam Foreman.
Welcome back to another episode of How to Buy and Sell a Business Successfully. Our goal here is to try to help educate and engage folks who are looking to buy or sell a business, really help answer a lot of your questions, give you a lot of information that'll help you have a more successful deal process. And we've got an exciting new kind of development, a little bit different format, a little bit different style for us today. In the past, we've really focused a lot on a lot of the informational content, but one of the things we're really excited about is to help our listeners and our viewers really connect more with the stories of folks that have had a really successful deal process. And we have an amazing guest to kick it off with. And Jacob, why don't you tell us more?
No, yeah, absolutely, Sam. Really excited for this. But joined today here by Scott Redler, the co-founder and former COO of Freddy's Frozen Custard. And the thing is, most people may hear of being able to taste a steak burger, but they've actually probably don't know the story of the steak burger. And so, Scott, if you want to just take a couple minutes to share about who you are and a little bit of the origin story about Freddy's.
Oh, it's great. Long time restaurateur, coming up on, hard for me to bbelieve, but 50 years in the industry.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do for that one. I'm going to go out to eat. That's what I'm going to do. There's no question about it. One of my favorite restaurants. But it is fun. Freddy's was kind of opened on a whim. We had Bill, Randy, and I talking about it one day, and Randy goes, we don't have any frozen custard in Wichita. And I go, you're right. And I grew up in St. Louis. St. Louis is the home of Ted Drew's Frozen Custard and Steak and Shake.
Okay.
We had a lot of Steak and Shakes there, and I grew up on those. And I go, I love frozen custard, but why don't we do steak burgers and frozen custard together? And Randy, of course, was an owner in Panera, and Bill and I at that time had Timberline Steakhouse. So we all started talking about it, and a building became available, and here we go.
Yeah. And then how long ago was that when Freddy's was introduced?
2002.
2002.
Yes.
Wow.
It's amazing.
It is. And
it's gone by so quickly.
Yeah. How many locations are they at to now?
Around 525 or so.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. Well, when you think back on that time, what were some of the biggest challenges you encountered as you were growing that business? I mean, that was 2002. You're up there now over 500 locations, and it's a franchise. So what was kind of those challenges that you saw as you're growing the business?
First was determining that we should franchise, and that was a big step. And, we had the first one, and we were doing fine. And, welcome to Wichita, Kansas. It was 18 minutes from our houses.
Yeah.
So Rock Road became available. One of the only, probably one of 10 or 12 in the country that don't have drive-thrus. And we said, well, we're not going to keep driving 18 minutes. This is, it's like driving to Kansas City almost. Yeah. So we
it's such a Wichita thing to say.
It's a Wichita thing. From a guy that moved from Washington, D.C. That takes an hour to get a gallon of milk. But so opened up Rock Road, and that was really the catalyst. A lot of folks that had other restaurants and businesses said, hey, wait, I want to do a Freddy's. And Ron Oberg, first one, very dear friend, Ron and Patty, said, hey, look, I want to do this. And we were on the Kansas Restaurant Hospitality Association together. And lo and behold, we drive to Hutchinson, Kansas, and here we go.
That's awesome.
That's great. That's great. I mean, was there ever a point in that process where you guys were seriously thinking about, hey, maybe this isn't the right direction for us from a growth perspective?
We didn't rush into franchising. We took we went pretty slow paced on it, and but once it started, it was a snowball rolling downhill. I mean, it was huge, and I still remember a day we opened 7 in a day. And you go, holy cow! I mean, who the heck are we, right?
Yeah.
And still hard to believe some of the scale that we took it to, and then selling it with around 400 locations 3 years ago.
Yeah. How many locations were you at when you decided to go the franchising route?
We only had a couple, 2, and maybe third one was probably I think El Dorado was starting under construction. And then we had lovely Hutchinson, which has been an amazing location really from the beginning. Yeah. The fun thing about that one is the general manager, Chris, who opened that one, just recently, I believe, retired. And I got to see him not too long ago. It's a family.
Yeah.
Restaurants are a family.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So you went from that first location to a couple of locations, and then people started having that interest in there. How many years was it from starting to when you had that first franchise location?
Oh, I think we're about 3 or 4.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great. Did you ever feel during that process pressure to kind of grow faster than what you were comfortable with?
Never. Part of the luck. A lot of things fell into place. So part of it is Randy's running a group of Paneras and a partner, and Bill and I had Timberline Steakhouses. So we weren't relying on Freddy's for any income.
Yeah.
That was a strategic advantage that we didn't know we had.
Yeah.
Because really we opened up Freddy's West because, let's face it, we wanted frozen custard in Wichita. We wanted steak burgers in Wichita done the right way. We call it the Freddy's way, by the way. And that's what got it all going. It wasn't, we weren't going, we're going to open up 500 of these. We never thought of that.
Right.
We opened 1.
Yeah.
Never thinking we're going to open a second.
Right.
And then, tired of making the drive and number 2, and here we go.
Yeah. What were some of those things along the way that really made it possible for you to kind of have that growth opportunity?
I think keeping it simple, keeping it focused. I'm a big believer that the main thing is keep the main thing the main thing.
Yeah.
And our focus was that I've run full service restaurants. I've run some fast casual and diners and things like that. But our focus was totally on quality of food, doing it the right way, hospitality, and culture. And when you take those components and add them together, when you're not totally focused on, making a profit and an ROI and the whole bit at the beginning, that was an advantage for us. Although, people that know me, profit is not a dirty word. I was going to say that.
Amen.
We love that. So that's what it takes to drive business, and we focus on that. But it's so important to just do things. I'm going to continue to call it the Freddy's way.
Yeah. So kind of leaning into that as you grow with franchises, how were you able to build and maintain that strong culture as the business grew? Because when you get franchises involved, those are also independent business owners, and how did you continue to have that Freddy's way as they came on board?
Well, it's a great comment, Jacob. I mean, the culture is something that takes forever to build. You build your culture, you add to it. My brother used a line: "You make deposits or withdrawals every day in a category like culture."
Oh,
it's a great line. And I gave him credit for something. That's good. Anyway,
we'll send you a clip of this one.
It's for free. A digital clip. And so you look at that, and then you go, okay, how do you make sure you're getting the right franchisees?
Yeah.
And that's where it comes in. And we had kind of a 4-step process. One is kind of somebody who has a financial wherewithal to do it, the operational expertise, or the ability to hire it, or better yet, make them an operating partner. A lot of those kind of deals happened. Third is a territory that you both agree on, and whether for scale and size and growth. And then lastly, and absolutely the most important, is a rule I call the no jerk rule. Life's too short to do business with jerks. I was being nice. I was going to change the word. And it's just not worth it. We're all here. We're on this planet for a certain number of days. We don't know how many that is.
Yeah.
And as I get older, I realize that more and more. And why do you want to spend time with people you don't want to spend time with?
100%.
So we've been lucky over the time in our Freddy's world. I think we've only had like 2 franchisees that, due to unusual circumstances, we said, they really need to exit the system. But that's pretty good out of 65 or 70 franchisees, and we made that happen. So it really turned into a Freddy's family with the right culture and the right attitude, and the focus on taking care of our team members and taking care of our guests.
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah. Well, and kind of going through that process with that scale, was there ever a point that you came to where Freddy's that was at a place that, that could fail, or like at a place where you were faced with some serious challenges, and then how did you pivot from it?
I think the serious challenges, we had a supply chain challenge at one time. I think COVID was absolutely a challenge, but we had a team assembled that everybody knew what the mission was. And when you know what the mission is and you're all in a room, you can solve anything.
Yeah.
And if you can't, you're in trouble. But our team came in and we did so well. Look, during COVID, the beginning of COVID, it was a challenge like everybody else going, what the heck's going on? We've never experienced this. And then you go through and you go, okay, how can we make this work? And how do we speed up our drive-thrus? How do we make our dining rooms acceptable for health standards in the state of Kansas and nationwide? And I still remember being down in our South location, Freddy's putting up the panels and everything else, making it. And this was our test. And then we shared that with franchisees to keep them going.
Yeah. Yeah. As a franchisee in the fitness space, you're always dependent on the franchisor on a lot of different ways, because you're looking them for guidance. And if you have, and they all use Orange Theory, I had a lot of trust in them during COVID because they were there for us. And it sounds like you did the same thing for your franchisees, was, be there for them, be that voice of reason to know that, hey, we have confidence in where we're going.
Well, people still need to eat. And just because of COVID, people didn't learn how to cook.
Yeah.
So they're still going out to eat. and we need to take care of our guests and exceed their expectations. The difference, of course, was we had long lines at Freddy's and people making margaritas when they're 50 cars out, which I thought was hilarious. But we were there to take care of our guests and take care of our team members and keep everybody as safe as we could.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I think it's really interesting how many of those things that you've talked about aren't, I would call them time urgency driven types of things. How you started with, hey, we're going to focus on a great product. We're going to create a great experience for folks. We're going to find something that, has a unique place in this particular market. And then you really focused on the quality. And then as you're growing and pursuing those opportunities, you talked about, hey, how important culture is, and using that right filter on the front end with your franchisees, when I'm sure, a lot of folks are maybe not as focused on that in the business, and they might accelerate their growth at least for some period of time based on those things. But I can't help but look at all of those things and think about how those, at least from my perception, laid the groundwork for the really incredible growth that Freddy's has experienced since then, and done it in, I think, the right way, in a way that's sustainable long term. Do you feel like that's a theme that you've kind of seen, where that groundwork, that patience, that diligence with keep the main thing, stay focused on that? Was that something that you were all kind of observing during that period of how impactful that was for your growth pattern?
Well, we were all looking, I think Bill, Randy, and I all had the same attitude towards growth. And that was to do it right, to do it measured. Don't do growth for growth's sake. And a lot of, I always laugh when someone comes, I've got this idea, I'm going to open up X business and then I'm going to franchise it. Oh, come on. That doesn't work. And I rarely have seen that work. What does work is somebody opens one, you're successful. Open a second, you're successful, maybe in the same town. Open a third in a different market. And then you've got proof of concept. But you've got to take the steps. And it's hard to be successful if you don't take those steps.
What is it about that process that you think when people are too focused on, hey, I want to build this big, massive enterprise, versus, hey, I want to go, learn what the market wants? What is it about that?
You just answered the question, because they're too focused on growing. You've got to make sure the product's ready to grow and is capable. And then as a franchisor, we need to be the best return on investment for a franchisee. And that's really, when it comes down to it, nothing else matters if you don't get past that first checklist. And the brand I'm working with now, Mokas Café, with Jason Egermanson, get to work with Jason, which is a blast. And we're focused on, we need to make a business that is a return on investment for a franchisee, because you've got a lot of places to put your capital. And if some people are borrowing part of it, you've got to make your money back.
No, that's terrific. I'm curious from your perspective, because I feel like I see a lot of folks that feel a lot of pressure on that first big idea that they have to go and make it wildly successful. And I look at your career path, for example. You mentioned, I think it was Timberline that you were with.
Yes.
When you were starting with Freddy's, and then you have Freddy's, and now you have Mokas. And How do you feel like the learning that you engaged with during that process has impacted what you've been able to, to do for yourself, for the people that you've worked with, for franchisees, for
Well, I used to have a full head of hair. Yeah.
What was that like?
Yeah, what's that? You got a good group here, don't we?
Yeah.
I have little kids. It's only a matter of time for me.
Yeah, don't worry, it'll happen. You know what? It's so critical that you stay focused on the whole path. I mean, that's the issue. You've got to understand what's important and what's not, and put your time and energy into that. And it's not always growth. Is it a viable business? I've closed businesses also. I've opened. I've written bigger. The checks have gotten bigger as I've gotten the ability to afford them. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately, but you've got to have the right brand, and it has to be viable. And so a young entrepreneur comes to me and they say, "Scott, I want to open a business," and first thing I do is encourage them that you need to do it, because if you don't do it and you're sitting back 25 years from now going, "Oh, do you remember when I had that idea and I didn't do anything about it?" Well, hell, that's not any good. So, as an entrepreneur, 3 things are going to happen.
Yeah.
You're going to make money. That works. You're going to grow the brand. You're in that mode right now with Orange Theory, and it's important to do that. Second, you're going to lose money. Okay, we tried it, didn't work. I gained a lot of experience. I opened up a fast food Chinese restaurant in my mid-20s, kind of like Panda Express, location, whole different story. But that was my master's degree. So I had that knowledge. It didn't work. I got out. I think but it helped leapfrog me to greater successes. I think the worst place to be, and I say this to a lot of people, is in the middle, where you're sitting there and you're breaking even, you're not making a lot of income. If you're in that boat, get out. You got to get out, because you're not going anywhere. You're not putting your energy into something that works or that potentially works.
No, well, I like that. I mean, we've observed a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, from a community perspective, who keep holding on. They're either in that place or they feel so much pressure to make an idea work, even when it's, in the scenario you described where it's losing money and they're not making progress. What was that like for you? And you have had those opportunities to decide, hey, this just isn't working, and it's time to take the learning and move on to the next thing.
The passion and the culture, the restaurants, amazing. It's hard to see that, because there's a lot of team members and managers that had time and management, sometimes money, invested in the brand. And it's very hard to make those decisions. Yeah. But when it's time, it's time. Yeah. And then you do the best you can to help them move forward, or put them into if you got another project, something like that. So you're trying not to hurt people, of course. That's number one. Right. And that's the hardest part of it. Timberline, I still get, once a month someone comes up and goes, "Can you reopen that? We just love the blankety blank." Yeah. And then I see these buildings that are about the right size, and I go, "Should I do that?" I go, "What, are you crazy?" Although I'd love to do it, honestly, but I'm not going to. Yeah. At least I don't think so.
Yeah.
Well, and then kind of on that decision front, with the Freddy's, at what point did that decision start to come more relevant of maybe it's time that we exit and we move on to something different? Like what was that process like? And when did that kind of those discussions start happening?
Yeah, it started about 3 years prior. We always talked about it. We always said we didn't want to go public personally, because you make decisions in a different way. Yeah. And so Randy, Bill, and I started talking about it. Bill got sick and ended up passing away. And so Bill was gone when we sold. It's a shame he didn't get to enjoy that whole process. And Freddy passed away, and then it was just Randy and I. And so it was just, it was time. We were at 400 locations. We were on a tremendous growth path. And Freddy still is on a tremendous growth path. Yeah. And they're doing great.
Now, are you still involved in any way right now?
Not any way at all. Okay. Which is bittersweet. I'm friends with a lot of people and want them to do the absolute best that they can. I'm actually going to tour the new office next week.
Yeah, because they just moved up on K96 and Webb.
Yeah. On Cypress. You can see it from K96 and understand the new office is beautiful. So looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, because they've kept their headquarters here. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, for those that are familiar with kind of Wichita's history of losing headquarters, when there have been some of these big transactions, that's something that always stings a little bit for me every time I drive by a Pizza Hut. Yeah, what was that like? Was that something that was really important in the sales process to you and the other?
It was important to us, but when you have to remember when you sell a company like that, they give you a really big check for them to make the decisions.
Right.
And so they get that. And I think it was a smart decision to commit to Wichita for another chapter. The new office is great, and they'll just continue to grow the brand. I think when you look at the companies that have left, I still remember talking to the Pizza Hut guys when down to Dallas, and it used to be they'd come here and they'd be welcomed with open arms. And Wichita is a secret. It's the town that a lot of people, kicking and screaming when they have to move here. Then they live here and they never want to leave. Kicking and screaming even more when they have to move back to a Dallas or Chicago or whatever. And we're that way. We moved here in 1990 from Washington, D.C. Pregnant, first child. Here we go. And I promised Betsy that 2-year window. We live in Wichita for 2 years. That was 34 years ago. and we love it. We'll always have a home here. The people are wonderful. The culture, the nature of people. It's a great place to raise a family. Ours have left now. Our kids are in D.C. and New York. But it's just a wonderful place to live.
Yeah. When I moved back to Wichita, I said 2 years. And now it's been 8. And I don't plan on leaving anytime soon because this community has afforded me so many opportunities.
There is, but the one negative is when you fly somewhere, sometimes you got to it's 2 legs to get about anywhere. Yeah. And my only comment to people who worry about that is get over it. There's so many more amenities on our side that make it more valuable than that. Where we could live anywhere in the world right now. Yeah. And our main home is Wichita, Kansas. That's great. And it always will be. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. One of the things Jacob and I are both really passionate about is the community impact that businesses have. And that's one of the things I was most excited about and most impressed with is that, for example, Freddy's at the headquarters is still here. And one of the things that we're trying to better educate people on is when that's an important part of someone's decision process is that kind of that community legacy or that next step that, what that looks like and the ability to be intentional with that from a process standpoint. I really like what you talked about, which was, obviously you're handing over the keys to somebody when you have that sale, but that Wichita was in, for example, was in a position from a community perspective to be a compelling place for them to keep it in the first place.
And we need to continue to put time and energy into that. There's a reason that Betsy and I got involved with Butler Culinary. If we have more exciting chefs come out, they're going to open more exciting restaurants. The amenities in a community should be the reason that people move to a city. And you look at Exploration Place, you look at Botanica, our zoo is amazing. We have all these really cool things, Intrust Bank Arena. We have all these things that make it a great community. I think if we continue to do that, if we can make it more of a food scene with both Butler and Niche, and it's funny, everybody thinks we work together on a lot of things. It's great. We need to make it a better foodie community to draw more people to Wichita, Kansas.
Well, and as we're recording this episode, Elsewhere Fest is about to happen, and that's another part of the scene too, is with the music industry. Yes. And how much people don't realize how many budding artists we have here in the Midwest. And with that Elsewhere Fest, it's a way to really amplify that voice in Wichita. I think a lot of great things are happening in Wichita. And then now with you and your wife are very instrumental in a lot of things. Like you said, Exploration Place, the Redler Culinary Institute out in Butler County, and just all the other things you're doing, because you didn't just take your check and then move to the beach. You're reinvesting back in this community, and that's a lot of what was talked about with the Chung report was capital velocity. Taking those funds they're made from great success stories and being able to reinvest back in the next entrepreneur, the next big community project, those sort of things.
Very rewarding. I forgot to move to the beach. Thank you for sharing that. My wife's going to remind me of that.
SPF, right here.
SPF. Always need a hat. Anyway, it's so important. We've got so many great entrepreneurs in our community and people that pull together to keep moving us forward. And I think the projects like what Butler did, what Niche did, the music industry, I think music downtown Wichita if things go as we all think they're going to, in 5 years, it'll be amazing.
Yep.
And that's a great thing. And how do you get people to move to a community? It's not, I remember the Sam Brownback exercise of let's get rid of corporate taxes. I'm not sure that moves the needle because we have to fund our schools. We've got to educate our kids.
Yep.
And we're big believers in that. And so what's the next step? What do we do that really draws people to move to Wichita, Kansas? It's making the community a better place to live.
Jake and Sam here.
Thank you for joining us. If you find this content helpful, please like, subscribe, share it with a friend, and especially leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or iTunes. Really helps us out a lot.
Yeah, 1 star. It's on Sam.
Yeah, it's definitely on me.
Well, kind of on with Wichita, Kansas. What was the organization, the private equity group you guys sold Freddy's to?
Thompson Street Capital Partners.
And so and there was their first move into the restaurant industry.
It was.
How did those conversations start? How did you get them intrigued on Wichita, on Freddy's, those sort of things?
Well, they their job. I mean, my son-in-law is a principal in a private equity firm in New York, so understanding the process, they're looking for businesses to buy that have a lot of growth potential. And they contacted us. I ended up having lunch with one of the principals in St. Louis. And then the conversation started. What a wonderful organization. Great people that are focused, understand what's right, listen to our comments, and are hopefully taking Freddy's to the next level.
Yeah.
And I think they will.
Yeah, it seems to be. I mean, I'm in the news all the time of them adding more locations, and they bought some different people onto the leadership team to help exponentially to grow that exponentially too as well.
Yes.
And do you feel and with private equity, and because you mentioned growth needs to be right and measured, do you think sometimes growth can happen too fast when you get like private equity involved?
I don't know if it's necessarily a private equity thing when growth happens too fast. I think that as leaders of any business organization, Coke Industries. Coke is very strategic about how they think about growth, right? And it's fun to watch them and watch the processes and the things they do to change. Private equity or anyone, you've got to grow at the right pace that you can handle and do it right. I was involved with a restaurant company right out of college a few years ago, and they had one brand that they grew too fast, and they couldn't execute at the right level, and they had to take a step back and rework it. So I think it's important just to understand the leadership, private equity, private capital, doesn't matter, VC, venture capital, they have to grow at the pace that makes sense for that business and at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the term human capital, which a lot of people don't like that term, but you've got to have the right people in place that are really devoted and partners. We're big believers. We did that with Timberline. We did it with Freddy's when I was there. Our general managers were owner-operators.
Yeah.
We're doing that with Mokas, our restaurant operating partners run our restaurants.
Yeah.
And their names on the door. And that's critical.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah. When you were going through that sales process and thinking about, hey, here's the culture that we have, here's, the people that we've built this business around, how did that impact kind of that process of screening, the buyer that you thought might be the right fit?
Well, culture was critical. We did not want, so let me go into the franchisee segment, and that'll kind of give you our direction.
Yeah.
When I still remember having potential franchisees come. We have a thing called Discovery Day where come in the night before for dinner, and then we meet with them the next day for the day. And a lot of times, the ones with money, we'd walk down the hall and go, nope. So we were not in a rush to make a decision. We still think strategically. Thompson Street Capital Partners, they were the right organization. They have a great leadership team, and they are moving the business forward.
Yeah. One of my mentors was very active at the pizza franchisees. And, when they lose sight of who they're trying to impact the most is the franchisees is when they lose focus. And I think that's so critical. Being in Orange Theory, they've kind of went through a shift here recently. They were really focused on the large private equity groups that had the larger markets, but they were missing out on the ones mom and pops like my wife and I that had 3 locations. And so they're pivoting a lot because they realize they're the ones that make the brand. They're the ones that are having the impact that are tied close to the brand. Because my wife and I are in the studios daily. And I think that's so true with the culture side of it, because once the culture's gone, the product's gone.
I mean, versus waking up at 6 a.m. and looking at the numbers, you're in your locations.
Yeah, I am.
The right thing to do.
Every day.
I agree 100%.
Yeah. No, that's terrific. I mean, I want to go back real quickly to one of the things you said earlier of keeping the main thing.
Yes.
I mean, that feels like it's such a simple concept, but something that people lose sight of so often. Why do you feel like so many people get distracted from that type of a focus?
Well, in our industry, you sit and you've got to put yourself in the guest perspective. Mm-hmm. Who's the most successful, highest volume fast food restaurant in the country? Mm-hmm. Who is it? Do you know?
McDonald's?
No. Highest average volume.
Oh, Chick-fil-A.
Thank you.
Yep.
And their numbers are huge.
Jesus Chicken. Yeah.
Yeah. And Jesus Chicken. I'll way to put it. From the short Jewish guy. Anyway, but it's fun to see that. And why are they successful? And they're successful because they have a limited menu, and your expectation. And if I ever write a book, it's going to be called The Power of Consistency. They are consistent with their product every day. They're not trying to put on 72 items and do a mediocre job with those items. And
Right.
So that's where the main thing is important. You can't just expand a menu.
Right.
We focused on here's what goes into our fryer. We know we can put out hot, fresh fries all day long because we only have 4 items in a fryer. Those are the kind of things that do make a difference. Chick-fil-A, same thing. Although I still wish we would have closed on Sunday at the beginning of Freddy's.
Yeah.
I think strategically that would have been a great decision for us. And obviously it's too late once you get going.
Right.
But
Yeah.
But I like that idea. I like how they do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's what my wife and I joke. We with Orange Theory, we're open 364 days a year. Only day we're closed is Christmas Day, and that is so hard to staff.
Yeah. No, that's great. I mean, it feels like there's. I like the word you use, that consistency.
Yes.
Yeah, and it feels like there's so much focus that goes into. Understanding and maximizing the value of that ultimate thing that you sell.
Yes.
And I feel like a lot of folks, as they're trying to build something that they hope will be a viable business, that they're thinking about like all of these other different things. They're thinking about, hey, I want to build something big. I want to build something exciting. I want the headlines. I want all of the new stuff, whatever it is. And it feels like it would take a lot of patience and a lot of commitment to understanding and really building around that sort of thing. Did you find that was difficult from a culture perspective to maintain that focus? I think consistently over time. I
think the consistency. My viewpoint is that the general manager is the most important person in any food service operation, in any restaurant company. It wasn't me sitting in the corporate office and traveling all the time. It's the person where the rubber hits the road. And we focus on that. Go back to Chick-fil-A a second. Chick-fil-A does a restaurant operating partner program. And so did Outback. And you look at what are the commonalities of all the real high volume successful corporations in our industry, In-N-Out Burger. How many items do they have on their menu? My goodness, I love it. Yeah. And they're smart about it. So it's that power of consistency, and then having the right, it's really food and leadership. Yeah. And if you get the right leadership by taking care of them the right way and making them partners in your business, you win.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love it.
And looking back on, I know you're still working on new projects, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but looking back on your time at Freddy's and then Timberline before that, is there anything you would have done differently in the process of growing and then ultimately selling Freddy's?
It's hard to go back and look at it that way. Yeah. For me, I think when you're presented with a decision, you take the facts in front of you and you make a decision. I look back at what worked and what didn't work, and focusing on what did work well, the restaurant operating partner programs, and JRI does that out of Salina and celebrates it. We just had one of our Mokas general manager, Miko, in Salina, just received her 5-year check.
I saw that on LinkedIn. Yeah.
I mean, how rewarding is that, right?
Yeah.
You're giving somebody a significant check for doing their job and being a partner and being passionate about the brand and carrying on the culture. It's a wonderful thing. And you've got to celebrate the right things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, kind of leaning into that with Mokas. So you're now working with JRI on expanding the Mokas brand, and talk a little bit about that, because they have how many locations so far? And
well, 3 Mokas. Yeah. I did retire for 3 months.
Okay.
But also that was a year, I was also chairing the National Restaurant Association, representing 1 million restaurants and so I wasn't really, it was like, what am I going to do? Just this? I'm not ready yet. Yeah. There'll be a time, I think. Yeah. But I'll never stop completely.
You'll never retire.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my wife.
My dad's the same way. So it is. It's always in you.
But it is, so why Mokas? So my brother, who's a C-level guy with the Berkshire Hathaway Company and retired, and he owns 3 Freddy's, building his 4th. He does great with his Freddy's are amazing, and he was going to retire, and Jason runs those for him. And Jason and Barry talked, and all of a sudden, my brother's president of JRI Management, everything except for ops. And Jason goes, Scott, you want to work with your brother, and you can help me make Mokas more franchisable. And I love working with Jason and Lisa and my brother. And my brother and I talk every day anyway about business and cars, so we might as well have fun with it
and
there grow something. So Mokas has been so much fun. The people are amazing. The culture is spot on. The food, we put in some new menus, new menu items, new technology, worked on the prototype, the size of the prototype. We only have 3, so it's hard to say we truly have a prototype. But we're opening east, and then we'll be on 29th and Ridge West.
Oh, great.
We have that. We already have the dirt.
Okay.
But we were holding off on that one to finish the plans until we opened up east to figure out what we got right and what we didn't get right. More importantly, what we need to change. And so we're in that, and we're in the franchise mode. So we've got a couple groups that'll be great initial franchisees, and we're close, and it's very exciting.
Yeah.
For all the right reasons.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to stick with the focus of, as a franchisor, our goal is to make franchisees successful and have a great return on investment first.
Yeah.
And then everything else, the culture, the food, the brand, the hospitality, the passion, all those other components, as critical, but you got to get number 1 right first.
That's incredible. That's great. Sam, any questions?
Yeah. Some of what you were just describing kind of made me curious about what that process is like from a building perspective, you know, building a culture, building an enterprise, going from, hey, we've got a couple of locations to, hey, we've really struck a chord in the market, and there's big opportunity, big potential, but now we need to go from having something that's, you know, a smaller local feel to it to something that has that infrastructure to be able to, you know, scale that quality, scale that service, and do it in a way that creates something really world class.
You know, it's having the right people on the bus and that have done. So Mark Scholler, of course, is a dear friend of mine, and we worked together at Freddy's, and he was our franchise guy, and it took us to where we were and made us to an amazing point. So we already have some of those tools in place, and just continuing to make sure we bring in the right people that have the skill set needed to expand. It's interesting. I mean, it used to be at the beginning of Freddy's, I would meet with food brokers that represent 20 different brands.
Sure.
And work out deals to get better purchasing pricing and stuff. And then we shifted to manufacturers. But now I'm back to brokers. It's kind of funny. I get to see all these friends of mine that haven't really spent a lot of time with recently, and to help make the Mokas brand more viable. I mean, our goal as franchisor, profitability, right? So we need to make purchasing is one of those components.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you had an entrepreneur in front of you, and maybe it's advice you'd probably give me, that, you know, they're looking to eventually sell their business, you know, they like, what's kind of some advice you'd give them as they know they're small now, they're wanting to scale, but eventually, you know, their end goal is to sell to a larger group or something like that. What would some advice for them be? You've
got to be pragmatic about what it is you're selling. I mean, do you have something? Is it, this business, if we only did it this way, we'd make so much money. Now it's worth this. That doesn't work. You've got to have proof of concept. And proof of concept, if you're trying to just sell one restaurant, that's fine. You'll get a reasonable multiple. If you're trying to get an accelerated multiple because you have something that is expandable, you got to prove it first.
Yeah.
You can't. It's not a wish and a prayer is not a business plan. And so you've got to have the brand and everything ready to go. You got to, all right, we're going to invest X in a building, and we're going to rent from ourselves or do whatever. And our business is this way, and our business on an investment of X is going to return 15%, 20%, 25%, whatever it is. You've got to have that all lined up, ready to go.
At what point do you feel it's right to take on like a strategic investor? So you're still the owner in it, but you need some extra capital to be able to start scaling.
I don't think it's ever a bad time. It takes pressure off.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. As long as a strategic investor is truly a partner and you work out the deal. Most deals we've seen with that have been great. I was just talking about one this morning with someone that wasn't, because one side was making too much money on real estate so the restaurants couldn't be profitable. And well, that doesn't work. Come on, everybody. I'm a big believer. There's a book by Dr. Dennis Waitley. It's not in print anymore, called The Double Win. Okay. Both sides have to win. If you have a huge win, usually someone on the other side is losing. There's nothing wrong with both parties winning. Nothing wrong with that at all. And I think the perception of winning is different for different people. And I think the people that think they're winning big sometimes aren't. And we had a purchasing story related to that I had a supplier come in to my office, and she was visibly frustrated. And we were getting ready to renew our contract. And I go, what's wrong? And she goes, Scott, I was just somewhere, and the people I was talking with, they were arrogant, obnoxious, banging shoes on the table, the whole bit, trying to get better pricing. Because you buy the same product, you get it $3 cheaper, and you always will. Can we go have dinner? And so it is about relationships. It is about both parties working together, both parties understanding growth and understanding what can be and long term. The same team, Wooten Enterprises, made our first boost at Timberline. They make the majority of the Freddy's boosts today. Great company, and Todd Wooten's taking over from Dad slowly, but they're a wonderful company. What's wrong with that? Nothing. They win. They work hard. They give us a great product at a fair and reasonable price.
Yeah. Do you feel like a lot of folks, when they bring that zero-sum game mentality to negotiations, do you think that they actually end up creating any net value in the long term?
No, I just have a different opinion than they think they do. And that's they can do that.
Sure.
There's companies out there that's what they do. And I'm not saying it's always wrong, by the way. There's sometimes where that makes sense. There's a lot of people that think they're doing better in that component than they are.
Right.
And you need the tools of these outside companies to help get you to the next level. And there's going to be wins in that.
Sure.
So it kind of goes both ways.
Sure.
Sometimes it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's helpful. As you were sitting there describing that, I was curious about how, for businesses that prioritize that consistently, how they balance that with building culture and their priority on people and those longer term relationships that they might rely on. And but I like your response that there's going to be times where that's the best fit for the business.
But when you're doing it yourself, you still have to go back to good old Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. And you've got to make sure whatever you're buying that truly they are giving you a great price. And they're giving you we had one time with one food product that we had a supplier that didn't want to play years ago. And I wrote a letter to them thanking them for 13 years of supply. I'm not going to talk about the product, but and great supplier. We think your product was the best. Now we're in negotiations, and we have found another product that's comparable, that is acceptable. We like yours a little better, but this is a very much an acceptable product. And I wanted to thank you for 13 years of business. And my last line was, and by the way, the amount of profit you make on zero sales is zero. and it was a lot of product. And the president of the company called me that afternoon, and we worked it out.
Good.
You have to, as a supplier, you should never forget that the people that are buying from you they have to get good and great pricing based on the loyalty too. It has to be a two-way street. So it has to be, go back to double win, has to be a double win. If your supplier, if someone starts creeping up on pricing, which is common, that's why you're on contracts and certain things. But you've got to make sure that you're not allowing that to happen, but you have to verify that they are doing that. If you can buy X for $10 and your supplier is selling it to you for $12 and they're an 8-year supplier, that's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great advice. One of the things you talked about earlier, I think I certainly at points in my career have missed, is the focus that you have not only on like the end customer experience in the stores, but then also the understanding of maybe who your primary customer is as a franchisor, and that being the franchisees. And I think some folks, that have business models that have some similarities, maybe focus on only one versus the other. And I just thought that was interesting how much you've understood and built a lot of the model around the success is if we help these people win, right? And they have that incredible experience, the franchisees, the operators.
Yes.
Then they will take care of, the end customer experience, and they'll keep people, really committed to the brand, committed to the value that's coming.
Look, guest experience is critical. So we say guests instead of customers, by the way.
Oh, my bad.
It's all right. No, it's good.
Can you go back through and edit that
said
out?
that so I could use that. Yeah. Don't edit it out. Because it's important.
Yeah.
Everybody that's worked with me in the past will say, I can't believe you allowed that to happen. So I had to say that.
Yeah.
But you talk about that franchisors. Yes, franchisees, you're correct. They're our customer. But also every team member, every person in the corporate office and all team members in the corporate stores, same level of importance. The culture has to be there to make everyone understand. So it's kind of a three-way instead of a two-way, as you described.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And I like the use of that word guest. Why do you use the word guest as opposed to customer?
Well, a customer to me is transactional. And a guest, when you invite someone into your home, you're there to make them feel warm and welcome. And I believe that's what our goal should be when someone walks into a Mokas or a Freddy's or anything I'm associated with. It is... You feel great. You don't feel like, love to have it when somebody walks in to a restaurant and the cashier doesn't say anything. And so go watch that. And I do this in front of groups, and I'll just stand there for 30 seconds with nothing. Like right now, stop for a second. That was 10 seconds. It felt like an hour. And to a guest, that's so important, right? And to understand that, what's wrong with, hey, I'll be right with you. Thanks for coming in. If you don't do that, it's strange. Or you go to a restaurant and, front counter and go, you walk up and they go, yeah, cool, dude. I mean, we're not into that. We're here to take care of our guests. Right?
Yeah.
So all that culture is important.
Yeah, the member experience within like our space and fitness, I mean, it's so critical. I mean, that first interaction, whether it be over the phone or when they're walking into the studio for the first time, I mean, you got to make that experience the best they can ever have every time they walk in.
Yes.
They need to feel like that first time customer or first time member for us every time they walk in that door. No matter if they've been there for the first visit or the 500th visit, they still need to be welcomed when they walk in.
And if one of your team members makes an error, overcompensate. Right? You have to overcompensate. You got to take care of your guest because a long-term guest is worth everything.
Yeah. How powerful is that from your perspective when you create that experience for guests?
Well, I think it's critical to understand guest perspective. So, we always tell GMs, walk outside your restaurant, face the other way, close your eyes for a few seconds, and then turn around and pretend like you're walking in for the first time. Walking in as you're going to come in and do a full inspection on someone else's restaurant. That's where you're going to find the different things. Or to understand what the guest sees when you walk in the door. Are they seeing a dirty trash can? Are they seeing a beautiful marketing piece? What do they get to see?
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to take that outside viewpoint to make it work. And there's an old story we do. It's called the 2x4 story. And if I put a 2x4 between your house, your garage and your house, the first day you would trip over it. The second day you might hit it. Every other day you just step over it. It would be natural for you. It's important for a general manager and regional managers and owners to understand that the door threshold has to be spotless. The outside patio has to be clean. That's your first impression. And if it's off a little bit, someone doesn't necessarily think, oh, it's dirty, but there's all these little things that add up in their brain that they're not even thinking about that make them come back more frequently or less frequently.
Yeah, I mean, it's you're preaching to the choir in this one. I am so relentless about just the look and feel of everything. I mean, think about it when you're driving down the street in a beautiful neighborhood and you see a house that has a horrible front yard. What do you think about the owner of that house and the inside of that house just based on that? They may have a beautiful home inside, but if they're not taking care of that, your first impression is always negative.
Absolutely.
And I preach that all the time. It's inspect what you expect every time.
No, that's good. That's good. I mean, it feels like so many businesses are service businesses these days, even if we're or hospitality-oriented businesses, even if we're selling some sort of end product or end substantive service. For folks that are thinking about the value that they're creating in their business, if they're not focused enough on the service experience, if they're not focused enough on that guest experience, what are they left with in terms of the value that they create?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a term that I like, and it's really do things because you should, not because you can. And any business, think about that. When you're making a decision in a restaurant, if you're adding a menu item, should you? Is it because I love that item, let's add it? No. Or some people are going to like it. Well, some people are going to like everything. So do it because you should. Make sure business-wise it makes sense, mission it makes sense, focus, team member, guest experience, all those components, all the things you focus on to bring a guest in and keep them happy and your franchisees and your team members. Does it fit? Is it making it harder to operate? And you really don't gain anything? Is it a trade-off? We had a time once with salads. It was funny. We tested salads at Freddy's, and our one franchisee, and we'd try anything. And one of the other franchisees came in, and it wasn't really working well. And he goes, "Hey, I'm going to put salads in my restaurant." And I go, "Hold on." And I ran into the storage room, and I grabbed a handful of pens. And I threw one pen to him. He caught it, threw it back to me. I took it again and threw it to him. He caught it again, threw it back to me, and then looked at me like I was crazy. And then I took all the pens and went like this. and he drops them all. He goes, "I get it." I mean, it's the focus and mission. And when you're good at that, when you're good at what you do, and everything is an 8 or better on a 10-point scale, you're going to win. But if you try and do everything and can't execute, you're going to run into trouble.
No, I love that. I love that. That's really good. Yeah. Excellent. Well, I think we've got, Jacob, do you have one last question for?
I mean, the only one last question I have is, you're still going at it, so what are you most excited about right now?
Well, you know what? I love the excitement of watching people succeed. And probably half my time is in philanthropy world, as you know. The other half is with people, and to see someone, whether it's a general manager or an assistant manager, become a general manager or become a restaurant operating partner or the whole bit, watching people succeed and grow up in life, I love that. I mean, I still go back to a gentleman that was at Butler, and I used to always talk to their classes, and I'd go, "Hey, give me your top 3 students," and they'd give them to me, and I'd try and hire them, of course. And this is a gentleman that came to work with us. He's a general manager, doing absolutely great.
Yeah.
That's a reward. That's the reward. Yeah.
It was funny. Right before I came here, I had a person call me for a professional reference on a former studio manager of ours, because she's going on to do bigger and better things. And it's just cool to see them and being able to watch them as they go. And we were able to give them the foundation to be able to get there. Very cool.
It's great. Success of others, that's the reward.
Yeah, absolutely. Sam, you got any questions?
Yeah, I think just kind of last thought for our listeners, for somebody that might be, looking at continuing to grow their business or eventually wanting to sell it, what kind of piece of advice would you give them?
I'd say go find someone who has done it and sit at a table with them for a couple hours and talk about the pluses and minuses so they know what the expectations are. And to also someone who's going to be honest with them and tell them whether they have a brand that they should expand. It's got to be expandable. But, there's a lot of great people that are willing to give their time. A lot of people think there are not, but there are. And they're easy to get a hold of, and they enjoy sharing and helping you win.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I like what you said about people that have the experience and are willing to give you the honest feedback.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of folks that feel that pressure of telling somebody that their idea is a great one.
Yeah.
And sometimes the kindest thing you can do to somebody is tell them that their baby's ugly.
Yeah. It's the best advice you can give them too.
I mean, because otherwise they're going to waste a lot of their time.
Yeah.
They're going to waste a lot of their money. They're going to go out there thinking that they have something great to bring into the world. And
that's something that I see Wichita hopefully changing for the better is we sometimes are way too Midwest nice to folks when it comes to being entrepreneurs and starting companies. And we give them like the raw. That's a great, you're going to do this. Then behind closed doors, like, oh, that's a horrible idea. They need to be upfront with people because people will waste some amazing energy and time that could be pivoted to something bigger and better because somebody did not give them the honest feedback that they needed.
Yeah, and give them direction that can make it better.
Yeah.
If it's there, but you've got to be honest. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
People appreciate it. I agree with you.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, Scott, thanks so much for the opportunity to sit down with Sam and I. Love everything that you've done and are doing in Wichita and just continuing to just bless us with a lot of different things you and your wife are doing here. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's been wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sam, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. For future episodes, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And please check out our website at www.goforemanlaw.com/learning.